and not lend your ears to everybody, because a lot of people talk nonsense in this game, and that's the way a man must start.
Hello, thank you for joining us right here on our channel, Pigeon Duiwe News. My name is Tato Sehone. Thanks for joining us again. I'm with renowned fancier today, Mr. Bouwer, and he'll be telling us more about the pigeon racing and his career during racing pigeons, his winnings, and a few tips for startups and a few advisors for fanciers who really want to make it out there. Welcome to Pigeon Duiwe News.
Thanks for inviting me to join you.
Thank you. We're going to start from way back when you started racing pigeons. Just tell us more about how you started. What inspired you to start racing pigeons?
My dad was a fancier, and I grew up in a house where pigeons were, and I took a liking to them from early days of my life. And a lot of times my dad would have to go out the country to work, and I would help my mother with the pigeons, and that's how I got my liking for the pigeons.
And now pigeon racing is now called a family sport, you know. So your family joined you to racing pigeons, so it wasn't an individual thing?
No, it was a family sport.
It was a family sport.
Well, I would say my mother had to help because she wasn't fond of the pigeons, but yeah, she had to help, but I loved them.
And the age, what age do you start racing?
I've been in the pigeon sport for 63 years, so you can say I was about 8, 9 when I started helping my dad.
And how was pigeon racing back then? I understand now it's more evolved with the clocking, the systems. How was it back then?
Then we had the little clocks, and then the pigeon would be rung at the club with a rubber ring and put on the pigeon, and when the pigeon returned, you would take the ring off the pigeon and clock it. And that would give the time, and then you would have, say, they would judge, say the birds came at 3 o'clock, the strikeout would be at, say, 6 o'clock, and yeah, then everybody would go to the club.
And how many fanciers were there at the time?
In that club,
did you have a lot of fanciers?
85 fanciers in the club, in one club. The pigeon sport was big those days.
Compared to now?
Compared to now. Ginormous compared to now.
And what do you think is the cause for that?
Maybe, I think it's got expensive. Those days the poor man could fly pigeons and that. Today it's got expensive. Today it's more competitive. Pigeons have become a lot more expensive, and a lot of people can't afford that, I think.
Both racing for club level and one lofts.
Racing club level, one loft, because I mean if you're racing in a club, first of all you have to train your birds, the medications are expensive, the petrol is expensive, and yeah, it's become a hard sport now to be able to afford it.
You know, to maintain and
yes.
Race. And do you think will there be any solution for people who don't earn much to participate in the sport, or do you think it will be a sport only for the wealthy guys?
I think there is a gap for it for the people that are not, say, fortunate enough to have money and that, but it's going to be very hard for them to start to compete. To buy the good pigeons and things like that. Because without the good pigeons, you got no chance. The pigeons are the number one of everything, good pigeons.
And going to the good pigeons, how do you see, or how do you know you've got a good pigeon?
Well, you first of all, when you race, you can see which your good pigeons. I'll give you an example. My dad's most famous pigeon I think that the country's ever seen is a pigeon called Twilight. My dad never had money those days, and he managed to buy her mom and dad. He worked hard and he bought them. It wasn't that expensive for pigeons then. And yeah, and today I think a lot of people could start the game, but to get good pigeons it's expensive, or if they befriend people and that. And if you start, I think you've got to choose a person that you're going to befriend and say, that's the man I'm going to trust, and that's the man I'm going to learn from. I'm talking for novice fanciers. And not lend your ears to everybody, because a lot of people talk nonsense in this game. And that's the way a man must start. He must find a person that he thinks, well, is a good fancier, and can trust in the man, and they can be friendly. He will fly well one day, that guy.
Now, talking about a person you can trust, someone you can learn from. Did you have a mentor when you started racing? Who did
My
you look
father
up to?
and Mr. Skuma,
Mr. Skuma.
which I rate as the best pigeon fancier this country's ever seen.
And what drew you to him?
My dad and him were big friends. They were big friends, and my dad also learned from him a bit too. They learned from each other, and yeah, he was just a phenomenal pigeon fancier.
And the years during that time, when was it?
In the 58, 60s, let me get it right now. About in the 70s, 80s. Twilight was a 56, year 56.
Do you still have offspring from him?
No more.
No.
No more. I had, after my sales and that, then no more.
I heard you talking about the economy now in the sport, where now pigeon racing has become more expensive. How does one make means out of the sport? Does the sport only make you pay, or can you also make means to get money out of the sport? Just educate us about the economy in pigeon racing.
I think there is money to look. There's a lot of fanciers that fly well, and they don't earn a lot of money, but they've got good pigeons and they've built up good teams, and they compete on level terms with the good fanciers. You know, as they've got their pigeons and they've done well over the years, but they found few between. There's not so many of them.
And now, as you know, pigeon sport, pigeon racing in South Africa is quite big. But compared to Europe and other parts of the world,
Small.
Where are we in South Africa?
We're ground floor.
And what's the reason for that?
I think the numbers overseas there's so many more people racing overseas, and you know, and they a lot of them, it's become their work. Got good pigeons, sell the pigeons, trade with the pigeons, make millions. You know, the sport on the east has got so big. China, Taiwan, Bangkok, Japan, all over. A friend of mine's 3 years ago sold a bird for 350,000 euro to Japan.
And as we are in the state, because as you said back then, we had lots of fanciers.
Yeah.
And now the number of fanciers is declining.
It's declined plenty.
And that's the cause for South African pigeon racing to...
In the Cape not, The Cape have got plenty fanciers.
In Cape Town?
Plenty. There's plenty fanciers.
And what's the reason? Why are they plenty?
I think some of them are competitive in small lofts, and it's just a craze down in the Cape that the guys fly pigeons.
So they've got races for each person?
Also they've got a lot of clubs, but I don't know how it's all set up, but what I've been seeing lately is they all liberate together. They're going to all liberate together this year. And I'm subject to correction. This is what I hear. And they'll be liberating maybe 20,000 pigeons on some races and that. And you go to a small house. Man's got a small little loft. It's got 30 race pigeons for the races. And in the Cape too, they seem to afford it more. It's not like here the people, you know, it costs a lot more up here to raise pigeons than down there.
So the systems allow them to raise.
Yeah.
And no matter how many pigeons you have.
Yeah.
So there is a chance for you to raise pigeons.
Correct.
Yeah.